The morning sun rose over the lake, casting a golden glow on the water. The familiar sounds of nature created a serene atmosphere. I prepared for another day of fishing. Dad and I had been doing this for years, since I was a kid. So small I had to stand on a tackle box to see the water. I've loved being by the lake. This year felt different though. Dad hummed along to some old country song on the radio while I hauled the cooler to the truck. He patted my shoulder with a big, honest smile. Ready to catch a big one, son? I forced a grin and nodded. The drive was always part of the ritual. 2 hours north, past sleepy towns and fields that stretched as far as the eye could see. Black Oak Lake. Even the name felt ominous. As the boat glided across the still water, an eerie silence enveloped the surroundings. It was dark, almost black in places, surrounded by thick woods that pressed close to the shoreline. We set up camp at our usual spot, a clearing overlooking the water. The sun dipped below the tree line, casting long shadows that danced and twisted in the fading light. A strange stillness settled over the lake, broken only by the occasional chirp of crickets and the croaking of frogs. But beneath it all, a current of unease. I sensed something unusual, a feeling of being watched. We ate our dinner of beans and campfire roasted hot dogs in near. It was quiet, tension hanging heavier than the smoke from the fire. I tried to focus on the crackling flames, but the feeling of unease lingered. As the sun set, darkness fell over the lake. The night was a restless symphony of strange sounds. I lay awake in my sleeping bag, staring up at the sliver of moon visible through the trees. The whisper started subtly, carried on the wind. At first, I thought it was just the wind playing tricks on me, but the sound persisted, low and mournful. I sat up, heart pounding. Dad was snoring softly beside me, oblivious to the unsettling noises. Then, a crash. My flashlight beam darted around the campsite, landing on the overturned bait bucket, its contents scattered across the ground. The whispers seemed to have intensified, swirling around me, taunting me. Morning arrived slowly, the rising sun barely cutting through the thick fog that enveloped the lake. As we packed up our gear, something caught my eye. There, half buried in the mud near the water's edge, an old, worn-out boot, waterlogged and caked in mud. The leather was cracked and faded, hinting at its age. "Don't touch that." Dad's voice was sharp, filled with an unfamiliar fear. He rushed over, his face pale and drawn. He stared at the boot, his eyes wide with a mixture of recognition and horror. "Don't you recognize it?" he whispered. I shook my head, confused by his reaction. "We need to leave," he said, his voice tight. The knot of unease in my stomach twisted tighter. We were loading the boat, the silence between us thick and oppressive, when I saw it, a flicker of movement across the lake. A shadowy figure, tall and slender, standing at the edge of the trees on the opposite shore. It was too far away to make out any details, but I could feel its eyes on us. "Dad?" I whispered, my voice trembling. He followed my gaze, his breath catching in his throat. He stood there, frozen, his eyes fixed on the distant figure. "Let's go," he said, his voice sounding tense. "Yes, Dad. We need to move faster." I tried to keep my eyes on the figure. Dad drove the boat as fast as he could. We were halfway across the lake, the boat bouncing on the choppy water. When I looked back, Dad wasn't in the boat. It was as if Dad had simply vanished into thin air. But how? He was right next to me just a moment ago. My heart was racing. The boat was still moving, the engine sputtering, but Dad wasn't in it. He wasn't in the water. There was no splash, no cry, no sign of struggle. He was just gone. I froze, not knowing what to do, Dad. I screamed, my voice echoing across the empty water. I stopped the boat. I radioed for assistance, my voice steady as I relayed the urgency of the situation. Rescue boats arrived, their lights piercing through the dense fog that enveloped the lake. Divers plunged into the murky depths, their search a meticulous yet fruitless endeavor. They found nothing. No trace of Dad, no sign of a struggle, no clue to explain his sudden, inexplicable disappearance. The official conclusion was an accidental drowning, a tragic but all too common occurrence. But hope began to fade. They finally convinced me to leave the lake, to return to the world that continued to spin, even though mine had stopped. But I couldn't escape the memories, the unanswered questions, the lingering feeling that I had been a witness to something ancient and evil. The boot, the figure in the woods, the whispers on the wind, the look of sheer terror on Dad's face in his final moments. These images haunted my dreams, woven into the fabric of my nightmares. The rational part of me tried to make sense of it all, to attribute it to exhaustion, to grief, to the tricks that a traumatized mind can play. But deep down I knew the truth. Something took Dad that day. As I stood at the edge of Black Oak Lake, the memories of that haunting day flooded back. The horror, the helplessness, the crushing weight of unanswered questions. It was all too much to bear. Dad's disappearance remained a mystery, a cold case filed away in some dusty drawer. But I never stopped searching for answers. I devoured old newspaper clippings, local legends, anything that could shed light on the dark history of the lake and the fate of those who had vanished there before. Some say Black Oak Lake is cursed, haunted by the spirits of those who met their end in its murky depths. Others whisper of an ancient evil that lurks beneath the surface, preying on those foolish enough to venture too close. I don't know what to believe, but today I am here for one final cast. As the line sailed through the air and hit the water, I couldn't shake the feeling that some mysteries are better left unsolved.